Matt Murdock's life is worse than ever as he's desperately bleeding out in a church, which means that Daredevil Born Again is at its best with another banger episode. One that I'm not going to emotionally recover from for a long time. I demand that Marvel pays for my therapy bills for that scene, but I gotta wipe all the tears out of my eyes and push forward because there is so much to talk about from this episode. From Matt's grand return to the courtroom, to Jessica Jones being confirmed as God, to a little cameo from Avengers Tower, to familiar faces both good and bad returning, and everything in between, it's episodes like this that make Born Again feel so special when it truly hits its stride. It's the darkest hour for everybody as Fisk's grip tightens on those closest to Daredevil as we prepare for an even brighter dawn in the finale next week. And special shout out to Deborah Ann Wool and Michael Gandolfini because they continue to steal the show. Some truly incredible performances that had me on the edge of my seat. This was such an insanely tense episode. From the moment that opening scene started, my heart was beating faster than ever, and it still hasn't stopped. Honestly, I should probably go get that checked out, but there's no time for that. Here's your big fancy spoiler warning for the rest of the video, and a few set photos I'm going to discuss later on. But if you're watching an episode 7 breakdown without watching the episode first, then at this point, that's on you. Anyways, right off the bat, I want to talk about the big return this episode. Welcome home, Brett Mahoney. The king is back and better than ever, and God, how his face is a sight for sore eyes. Now that the GOAT is back, Cherry's ass can kick rocks all the way to bald hell. We don't need you anymore, you fraud. We got the OG back, and you couldn't lace his boots on your best day. How dare you even think to stand where he stood, as if you could measure up to the Brett Mahoney. It's a miracle that heart attack didn't take you, because you deserved it for even trying to fill his shoes. Okay, I've got that all off my chest for now at least, so I just want to say that I love how they brought Brett back into this series. Desperate times call for desperate measures, so seeing him step up after Karen got arrested to pull some strings to get her in his precinct is the kind of world building I love to see in the MCU. It feels so natural and makes a ton of sense that these characters would be operating like this to help the people they care about. Otherwise, it just becomes a glaring plot hole, like why Kate Bishop isn't here to help out, but at least we got Brett Mahoney back, so I digress. I'm glad that he's going to be sticking around next episode too. Hopefully that means we can get an entire season with him as a supporting character again next year. He is such an important part of this world that this show felt a little more empty without him, especially considering that Cherry could not fill that void. But now that Brett's back, I really want to see his reaction to Fisk's fascist New York and hear his thoughts on Foggy dying. There is so much more to explore with him as one of the best supporting characters from the Netflix show. And also, I know I proudly stand behind ACAB, so this might be hypocritical of me to hype up Brett Mahoney, but also, yeah, I am a hypocrite. Brett is exempt from that because he's the GOAT. If you got a problem with that, meet me tomorrow night, 9 p.m. in the parking lot, okay? Let's see who's got a problem then. Sorry about that, I got carried away again. My lawyers are advising me that it's not a good idea to threaten the viewers, but let's just move on to the meat and potatoes of this episode, shall we? Because the main focus of this episode is the trial of Karen Page. Last week's insane cliffhanger had her get arrested by that filthy pig Powell, and now we get to see the aftermath of that as the stakes are more personal than ever. I really love that the first scene of this episode has Fisk making a very rare public appearance just to gloat about the fact that he got Karen arrested. First off, really great sound design as he's entering the prison with those big booming footsteps drowning out the music in the background. Just goes a long way to make Fisk feel as imposing as possible and show just how big of a deal this really is. Then secondly, the fact that Fisk went out of his way to visit the cell just to gloat shows how obsessed he's become with Daredevil, as his entire life now revolves around ruining Matt's. He quite literally has nothing left after his home life with Vanessa was deservingly destroyed, and now to escape that crushing isolation, he's putting all of his resources into screwing over Matt Murdock. And Fisk being so petty that he visits Karen in prison is a telltale sign that you've got a great rivalry on your hands when it's not even exclusive to the main character. We get to see Karen and Fisk reignite their own beef together as he didn't forget what happened to Wesley and is happy to finally have his killer behind bars. A little too happy as well. That laugh is going to haunt me. Why did he make that noise? Why does he sound like that? His heart was not in that laugh, and that makes it even more terrifying. But in turn, even with Fisk holding all the cards, it makes Karen even more impressive as she fearlessly steps up to him without even flinching. Karen Page is by far the biggest example of a time where the MCU actually improved on a character from the comics, because instead of her selling Matt's identity to Fisk for heroin or being fridged, she actually gets to have agency in this story and verbally go toe-to-toe with the Kingpin as she's brave enough to rage bait him. Do you know how badass you gotta be to successfully rage bait the Kingpin and then smile at the end of it? Karen Page is the coolest person ever. I don't want to hear otherwise. I love how Karen has consistently been able to get under the Kingpin's skin as this civilian who does not fear him whatsoever. She absolutely rules, but all of that bleeds into the big event of this episode when Karen is actually put on trial for her crimes of alleged vigilantism. I'm probably going to say this at least 8 more times this video because I'm a textbook glazer, but this was my favorite part of the entire episode. I understand why there's been a lack of them because the story necessitates it considering that Matt and Karen are on the run, but god, I have missed a good Daredevil courtroom scene and this episode delivered on just that. Matt Murdock is the most dramatic man to ever live. His ass always has to make a big entrance coming into the courtroom. But you know what? He's a really good lawyer, so I'll allow it because I desperately miss seeing him take that stage. The aura was unreal. I felt it before he even entered the courtroom. Side note, but I love this genuine look of disgust Vincent gives when Charlie appears on screen. There is so much hatred in that gaze that tells the entire story of their rivalry. You can just tell he hates this man with his entire heart. It's so good. Charlie Cox is so good at this stuff, man. The effortless charm he has making these points is always so great, and I love the decision to have Matt come out of hiding for this event. It's a great way to show just how desperate he's become as he gives up one of the last 2 big cards he has to play as he makes himself a target once again. But despite how risky that is, it's a great way to show just how smart Matt is. Having him use his status as a hero after he was officially branded by Fisk as one in episode 2 to support Karen is so smart, and it completely turns the tables on this entire situation, especially when you take into account that this whole thing is being live streamed. While freeing Karen Page is of course the highest priority and the most important thing anyone could ever do in their life, secondly to that is how this court case basically acts as a trial for the city as a whole. This public display of the law is the Resistance last chance to win the people over and show them the corruption within Fisk's system. So having Matt carefully choose his moment to come out of hiding to reinforce that idea is a great way to show the importance of what's happening right now. In the beginning of the season, when Fisk called Matt a hero, it was done out of necessity since he couldn't out him as a vigilante without ruining his whole campaign and admitting that a vigilante saved his life. But in doing so, Fisk also twisted the narrative so people who support vigilantes were searching for Matt Murdock, while the people who hate them were searching for Daredevil. It basically boxed Matt into this corner where he had people looking for him on all sides, and he was never going to be afforded a moment of peace ever again. But now, Matt twists that back around and then some to make it backfire on Fisk, as the public support he's placed into Matt Murdock's name is now going to be used against him to win over the general public because he basically endorsed Matt Murdock. It's genius writing that makes sure all of these decisions have an impact and that everything in this season has built up to this one moment right here. The whole time Matt and Kirsten were grilling these pigs on the stand, I was wondering where it was all going because the entire system is rigged against them. It all felt a little bit pointless to put on this show, but the reveal that Kirsten's strategy was to play to the court of public opinion was great. A major theme of this season has been about the power the individual holds as they're able to fight back against this system and how one person is able to make a difference. So having Murdock and McDuffie's testimony being about winning over the audience is a great way to show the power of the people. They are far beyond the point of challenging Fisk on any legal front, but with all eyes on this case trying to figure out what happens to Karen, including that of the governor of New York, they're actually able to finally make some real progress in this war as they put on the show for the governor to see that Fisk needs his support pulled. The biggest problem for the Kingpin this season surprisingly hasn't been Daredevil or Vanessa's head blood, it's been the people above him as they show that he's just a big fish in a small pond, and that compared to the governor of New York and the CIA, he is nothing. So having all of these plotlines collide as Matt and Kirsten get crafty to appeal to that higher power to strike down Fisk is brilliant. If you can't tell, I missed the legal drama aspect of this show so much. It's just as exhilarating to me as any brutal fight they do. I swear, Matt Murdock aura farming in a courtroom hits just as hard as that knee strike in the last episode. And what's so cool about this court case is that it starts an important chain reaction for the rest of this episode, so let's just go down like 3 different tangents before finally circling back around to Karen real quick. Now that Matt and Kirsten have inspired the governor to pull support from Fisk, old Willie over here is not a big fan of that and is going to try and have her assassinated. So now this problem is snowballing out of control, but thank God for Jessica Jones, our Lord and Savior. We are so much better off with Jessica in this series. Her presence is a gift. I really like the decision to have Jessica find out from Mr. Charles that Fisk is going to have the governor killed. They're using Jessica in a really smart way to bridge the gap between the Mr. Charles and Daredevil plots of the season. In the first half of the season, whenever Mr. Charles would appear, he was so isolated, only interacting with Fisk and rage baiting him, but now that he's overplayed his hand and went after Jessica, it gives her a natural reason to enter the narrative and inform Matt of what's going on. It's really smart writing that makes Jessica immediately feel important to the narrative and really useful in this show, as none of it could be possible without her. As every good show should do, I'm really glad that things are starting to connect as we speed towards the finale next week, which I really don't want to think about because that is crazy we're already there, but I'm glad that this puzzle is starting to solve itself thanks to Jessica Jones' appearance. Who would have thought that a scene of her breaking into Mr. Charles' home and interrogating him in his underwear would be so important to the series, but I wouldn't have it any other way. That feels incredibly on brand for Jessica Jones. The most interesting part of their whole interaction, though, is not the fact that the governor is going to be assassinated crazy style. No. It's that we've finally got our first Luke Cage name drop.
Don't forget, I am the only one that can connect you with Luke.
Who cares about the governor? We got Luke Cage to worry about now. If only you could have heard the sound that came out of my mouth when I heard Mr. Charles invoke his name. I popped off like I was watching Andrew Garfield step through a portal and No Way Home again. That's how serious I take this Defender stuff. I'd make the noise for you now, but it's currently 1:30 in the morning when I'm recording this, and I don't think any of you want to hear that. But that confirms the big question we had last episode, that Luke was indeed the guy who joined up with Mr. Charles, and now we know he's overseas on a mission for him. I do have to say, I understand why they did it so they could write Luke Cage out of the story all while incorporating him into the plot in a natural way, but it does feel a little out of character for me to have the Luke Cage join up with the CIA, so I hope we get some more information on that next episode. But I am glad that they explained it by saying he's doing this to protect Jessica and Danny, so I won't go too hard on them until we get the full story. It's not like he hasn't worked for the government before in the comics. He literally ran the Thunderbolts at one point, but maybe it's something like that where he's doing this big rehabilitation mission and he's going to be the leader of the Thunderbolts in the future. It sounds insane, I know, but you can't rule it out with all of the connections to Valentina this series has. I can only assume that Mr. Charles came in with some crazy amounts of blackmail and manipulation, so I am praying that we get to see Luke have some sweet revenge for this. I know he's a hero for hire, but my man has standards. He would never do the government's bidding, especially with what they did to him. Let me see Luke Cage get his revenge on Mr. Charles and break both of his arms at the same time. Just know that when we do finally see Jessica and Luke share the screen again, I'm going to be insufferable about it. I love them together so much. And for as much as I do love talking about Luke, Jessica, and their insane chemistry, we gotta get back to talking about the whole governor situation. I feel like that's kind of important to this episode. So Fisk wants to get the governor killed before she can remove him, then he'll replace him with that guy from last episode to have total control over New York. It's classic supervillain stuff, you get how it works. There wasn't a single part of me that expected Matt to use this as an opportunity to fully forgive Dex and let him go. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but this season is written so well as everything comes back and fits together so neatly. I really like that Matt lets Dex go on his own accord without any supervision. It's the only way he can fully show Dex that this is a true opportunity for redemption, as he places a good deed in his lap to wipe his ledger clean. It makes so much sense within the context of the narrative, as one problem solves another to wipe them both off the map, and is a huge moment of growth for both Matt and Dex. That being said, Matt waiting until Karen couldn't do anything to stop him is crazy. He has a death wish. Living on the Edge doesn't even begin to describe what he just did. He has the most insane Karen Page crash out coming his way, as he basically just sanctioned the death of some guy to prevent the mayor's assassination. But this is why we love Matt Murdock. He is a walking contradiction and hypocrite who, at the end of the day, is still a Catholic that believes in the most powerful word of all, Foggy Nelson. He took all the time he needed and waited for a sign from God, then lo and behold, here comes this golden opportunity with the governor, thus allowing Matt to reach the final stage of forgiveness as he grants Dex the mercy Foggy would have given him, allowing him to go out in the world and do something that is a net positive for once. And it gave us a mention of Ray and Nadim, which is always a blessing.
I hate you for Father Lamp and for Agent Nadim.
Every single time somebody mentions Agent Nadim, the world becomes a better place and an angel gets their wings. I miss him so much every day. The only thing more beautiful than this full circle moment as Matt uses it as an opportunity to test Dex and give him a real chance at redemption is Wilson Bethel's body, cause good lord, man. I understand why Matt can't stay mad at him. And I know this whole redemption arc thing isn't going to last, as it's basically an inevitability that Dex is going to screw up along the way, but I think it's really powerful to see him do that one good deed and actually save the governor's life. He was so proud of himself too. That little salute he did was hilarious. All that being said, if Dex truly wants to be redeemed in my eyes, kill Officer Powell now. I don't care what other horrible things he does. I don't care who he kills. As long as that smug expression fades from Officer Powell's face because of Bullseye's doing, he is a hero in my eyes, and that will never change. I need Powell dead more than anyone has ever died in the history of dying. Please, Dex, keep that momentum going and make Vanessa's death look like child's play in comparison to what you do to that miserable Officer Powell. I don't care about any no-kill rule at this point. He's gotta die. But here's the thing. The episode just keeps getting better from there as we get to see Karen Page being psychoanalyzed by Heather Glenn. And honestly, this might be my favorite scene of the episode. In actuality, there's like 3 different candidates for that, but this was just 2 great actors eating it up, and I enjoyed every single second of it. Deborah is masterfully playing the scene as someone trying to take control and not crack under pressure, while Margarita plays it as someone slipping into madness more and more with every line. Their dynamic is so fascinating to watch play out as they're basically polar opposites of each other. You could make the argument that Heather Glenn is just evil Karen Page. She's pretty much the opposite of her in every way. One of them loves Matt Murdock, supports vigilantes, and was able to get a hold of their trauma, while the other broke up with Matt Murdock, hates vigilantes, and is currently spiraling out of control because of her trauma. So putting these 2 magnetic opposites in a room with each other and locking the door leads to so much conflict, tension, and the most homoerotic scene in this entire show, which says a lot. But goddamn is it great. I don't know what kind of toxic Yuri they got going on with each other, but I am a fan of it. Also, even cooler is that this is the first time these 2 have met, so they've been building up to this confrontation for a while, and it absolutely delivers. Just watching them both try to outrage bait the other to see who snaps first, it is thrilling. Karen bringing up the fact that she and Matt have a real bond and true love for each other must have cut Heather so deep considering how alone she is right now. But you know what? Heather sucks, and I mean that in the most complimentary way possible. She is just insufferable, and I love it. After her run of terror this season, getting her way and siding with the fascist, it's long overdue for someone like Karen to call her out for those hypocrisies as she sides with murderers just because they validate her trauma in all the wrong ways. But then the fact that Heather fought back by mentioning the flashback episode from season 3 caught me completely by surprise because that is brutal and solidified the fact that Heather Glenn is the worst. She is a rotten person suggesting horrible things about somebody's dead brother just to try and win an argument. With every new episode, she's letting this trauma poison her more and more, and I think they're doing a great job of showing this fall from grace. Her slow burn turn to villainy has been one of the best parts of this entire season, as every new episode we see her make these drastic decisions that all come from a place of real emotion. And it's a very natural change as she's provoked in these ways and we watch her respond to it in the worst way possible. This is the closest she's ever gotten to actually becoming Muse, which as we all know is just a prediction right now and definitely hasn't been spoiled or anything like that. There's definitely nothing on screen right now that would say otherwise, okay? I don't know what kind of idea you're getting here, but that's just a theory. A game theory. My favorite part of the scene, though, by far, was this shot of Muse here right before Heather decides to slap Karen. It was such a great decision to have Muse completely out of focus for the entire shot. It makes him feel so much more unsettling as you can just make out the vague shape of him in the background. I really applaud them for having the restraint to not just outwardly show Muse and keeping him as this shadowy figure in the background. And above all else, I love that they broke the 180 rule for this shot to make it even more jarring and clear that he's disturbing the peace. For those who aren't aware, the 180 rule is a fundamental aspect of filmmaking that advises you to stay on one side of an imaginary line that cuts the room up into a 180-degree angle. That way, you've got enough room to move the camera around, all while making sure that the first character is always on the left side, while the second character is always on the right side to maintain that consistency and actually make it look like these characters are talking directly to each other. So the fact that they intentionally broke that rule to lean into how disorienting that is a great way to show the effect Muse has on Heather, as he throws things completely out of order for her and thrusts her into this chaos. It's a great visual trick executed perfectly that makes Muse feel like this threat looming over the entire scene and subconsciously influencing her decisions as she's now willingly getting violent. God, I love it so much. This entire sequence is basically just a great showcase of what makes Born Again so special. You've got a really interesting character dynamic on screen as they deliver some compelling dialogue, all shot in a creative way, and it is extremely homoerotic. I cannot stress that enough, and that is the core of Born Again. But yeah, I think on that note, that's pretty much everything that happened in this episode. Let me just check my actual notes here real quick, and no, yeah, that's everything. We've got it all covered. There's definitely nothing else we need to talk about that would break my heart, right? Okay, fine, Jesus, I get it. I can't ignore that big tragedy anymore. Just please get it off the screen. Everything that happened this episode with Daniel, BB, and Buck had me stressed out of my mind. They did such a great job building up to this moment over the last 6 episodes, as it's now time for a huge decision to be made. On one end, you got Daniel, who's been compromised for leaking information to BB, but on the other, you've got BB compromised for having this anti-Fisk messaging. Either way, no matter what happens, if one of them is to turn on Fisk, they are so unbelievably f***ed. From the very first moment they interacted this episode, I knew one of them wasn't leaving it alive, and boy have I never been more sad to be correct. The way they're able to drag this story out across the episode is a masterclass in building tension. Going into this episode, I thought for sure that Daniel was going to die, so it is a testament to how well done this scene was played that I actually believed BB might die when Daniel sold her out to Buck and gave him the address. I was so invested watching this play out that I was talking to my screen, telling him not to do it because I didn't want to see it end like this. And then started cheering to myself when Daniel wasn't able to commit and got BB away safely before I came crashing back down to reality and realized what's about to happen. But at least Daniel got his little hero moment as he finally grew a spine and was able to stand up to Buck. That's gotta count for something. It also might lead to him getting his ass beat so bad that his face was completely unrecognizable, but I mean, I'd much rather have that than what happens to him in the end. Artie's performance in this scene is so good, as there's this shakiness and uncertainty in his physicality and expressions. There was genuinely a moment I thought that Buck would shoot to the side of Daniel's head to let him go, but when Daniel decided to call him out and point out the fact that no matter how many people follow Fisk's orders, it's only a matter of time until they're next, that was when I knew his fate was sealed, as Buck brutally executes Daniel. And my heart shattered into a million pieces. You just created a million Daniel Blakes. We will carry the flame in his honor. It's honestly so impressive that over the course of this one season, Born Again was able to take a character who is this sniveling fascist and make me genuinely care when he died. You getting sick of seeing that yet? Because we got a lot to go. It just goes to show how great Michael Gandolfini is playing this role, as he's able to walk the line between douchebag and endearing so well. Even more so when he's on screen with Buck, because they did such a good job building out that friendship over the season, playing into their chemistry and strengthening the bond. There was this organic kinship between the two of them, and Buck genuinely saw Daniel as a valuable part of this empire. But at the end of the day, it was inevitable. I knew deep down that it was only a matter of time until it happened, but I didn't want to believe it. From the very beginning, Daniel's presence on this show has all been leading up to this one moment, as he went out of his way to endear himself to Fisk without ever facing any consequences. Then, when he finally gets his hands dirty, he realizes he's gone too deep in this organization and it isn't worth selling his soul to do. But at that point, the only way to make right for his past actions was to give his own life in doing so, to make sure that BB can get out there to spread the story. They turned this character into a fan favorite and made his death as heartbreaking as possible. They were supposed to be evil Matt and Foggy together, getting glizzies and being throat goats. It wasn't supposed to end up like this, but I guess it was poetic that both Matt and Evil Matt couldn't save their Foggy. The icing on this bloodstained cake as well was how they intercut this sequence with Matt in the church, bleeding out and begging for help. It's very well done to add even bigger impact to the scene, as they draw out the tension to make sure we are as stressed as humanly possible. The editing can be a little all over the place at times in Born Again, but when they're able to lock in with moments like this, it hits so hard and only reinforces what's on screen with impactful thematic moments. The cold, harsh blue lighting of Buck and Daniel's interaction contrasts with the warm red of Matt's church in a really interesting way, as Matt is seeking guidance in his safe space while Daniel is seeking absolution in a place of discomfort. Jeffrey Waldron was the cinematographer for this episode, and they're bringing him back to do the entirety of Season 3, which is a great choice. I especially love that Matt's prayer lines up with what everybody else is going through as they're editing through this montage. The line about being helpless and alone is clearly there to reflect Fisk's story right now, as he is completely isolated with nobody coming to save him. Then Matt saying, "God, come to me in my hour of need," is very clearly Karen, who's locked up right now and needs someone to save her. Before the final line talking about tribulations and sufferings cut to Buck as he's going through some immense pressure trying to decide what to do with Daniel, only for Matt to let out his amen as Buck makes up his mind and pulls the trigger. It is so brutal, but a really important lesson in how good editing can inform this entire scene. I especially like the moment where Matt is praying for God to come to him and then Jessica walks into the church to help. As far as I'm concerned, that confirms to me that Jessica Jones is God, and that is the one religion we should all be subscribed to. In Jessica Jones we trust. Alright, here's when things get serious, because next week is somehow the finale of Born Again Season 2, so it's time to make some bold predictions. Here's another spoiler warning real quick, because some set photos came out that made theorizing hell, so if you don't want to know any of that, get out of here. Go! Shoo! Thanks to Mike Coulter, we already know that Matt goes to prison next season, even though I've been theorizing it for weeks, so now it just makes my ideas look less smart in comparison, but I digress. The big question now is, how do we get there? What big moment happens in the trial of Karen Page that gets Matt Murdock sent to jail to go do a devil in cell block D? I think there's two possible outcomes, and I'm too much of a coward to pick just one of them, so here are both of my theories for which way it could go. The first is that Fisk reveals Matt's identity to get the trial thrown out for obstructing justice and basically guarantee himself a win. I'm no expert on the law, but I've read enough Daredevil comics to the point where I kind of understand what I'm talking about, and there's this big thing where Matt Murdock being revealed as Daredevil would get every case he worked on overturned because he was obstructing justice and breaking the law as a vigilante to get the information he used to win those cases. In a high-profile case like this, when Matt is defending Karen on charges of vigilantism, if Fisk were to finally leak Matt's identity to the public, it would get this whole case thrown out, and in exchange, Matt would be thrown in prison. And maybe that's a sacrifice Kingpin is willing to make to get his greatest enemy put behind bars. Option number 2, though, might be even more likely, as Matt willingly reveals his identity himself to prove that Fisk's campaign was built on lies. Earlier on in the episode, thanks to the GOAT Brett Mahoney giving them time to talk, Matt hints to Karen that he's willing to cross lines he's never crossed before in order to get her out of prison. He specifically makes note that it's not killing Fisk, so to me, that can only mean revealing his identity himself. Matt would effectively sacrifice his own freedom and peace of mind in order to get Karen out of prison and have Fisk's whole regime topple around him. Because if Matt is the one to willingly reveal his whole identity, then there's a real chance he can actually get Fisk taken down with him as he blends his two identities to show that Fisk's entire campaign was built on lies as the people finally turn against him. Then he can go be homeless mall Santa next season or whatever the hell he's got going on. Personally, I like the idea of Fisk revealing Matt's identity more because it gives him that plausible deniability to work with in the future, and you haven't completely let the genie out of the bottle, especially if the next court scene comes after the big riot in the streets as Daredevil leads an army directly into Kingpin's office to get him on the stand. It would feel like a monumental win for the good guys more than ever before Fisk drops this nuke in the courtroom that turns the tables completely. Then the governor and Mr. Charles can get Fisk taken down on their own. But after that scene with Karen, Matt revealing his identity almost feels like inevitability at this point, so no matter what happens, I think we can all agree his identity is not safe and he's going to rot in the slammer. To counterbalance a bleak ending like that, though, I do think we will see Luke Cage physically appear to settle the score with Mr. Charles and fight back against Fisk. They specifically said his name this episode, and to me that feels like a Chekhov's gun where he has to appear next week to get his revenge and fight back against the city that's trying to keep his wife down. He's running Harlem's Paradise after all. You'd think he'd want to get involved in something like this, even if he is overseas doing who knows God what for Mr. Charles. This could be a huge opportunity for Luke to come back and get his freedom from the CIA, as they not only stomp Fisk, but also Mr. Charles out of the city once and for all. Please, Marvel, just give me Luke Cage. I'm so desperate to see him again. And I'm feeling greedy, so you know what? Let's throw Iron Fist in there as well. I don't think Danny's gonna be throwing hands in the street, sadly, but I would love a post-credit scene that sees Danny suit up as the new Daredevil while Matt is in prison. It's a huge part of that Devil in Cell Block D arc, where somebody is posing as Daredevil to try and prove that Matt and him aren't the same person, and that would be a really good way to naturally bring Iron Fist back into the series, as he made that promise to Matt and the Defenders that he would protect Hell's Kitchen in his absence. So please, Danny, hold up your end of the bargain and actually show up to do the work. Then one last thing we haven't seen from the trailers yet that's going to play a big role in the finale is the fact that there's a fake Bullseye on the loose. You can tell which one is the fake Bullseye because they've got the old costume on from season 1, which has slightly less texture on it. And that also tells me I've spent way too much time looking at this stuff, but I can't help it. It's my addiction. So if I get my little theory brain working, here's what I think's going to happen there. I think that Fisk is going to hire a fake Bullseye to stage an assassination on Matt before the court hearing to prove his agenda that vigilantes are bad after they killed this hero. It'll be this big final Hail Mary attempt from Fisk to end this whole thing as he pushes his agenda harder than ever, but Dex is going to stop that from happening to brutally kill those Bullseyes and save Matt's life once again. Maybe you can even have this cruel twist of fate where the cops think the real Bullseye did it and he gets arrested in spite of that. It's exactly the kind of thing Dex needs if he's going to snap and become more sadistic than ever, as he had this big season-long journey about doing one good deed to wipe the slate clean, only for the cops to arrest him in spite of that, basically validating his words from earlier on in the season that people won't see him as anything other than a serial killer, so he embraces that going forward. And if Dex gets arrested, it also means we get to see more of him next season as he's Matt's buddy in jail. So please make that happen. Their chemistry together is far too good to waste, and it would be electric seeing them together in prison the entire season. God, what a great season of television this has been. Even as a season 1 Defender, they've blown that out of the water with some of the best Daredevil moments we've ever seen in live action. And an upsetting amount of feet as well. Even in this episode, we can't escape it. Who is it on the production team that's a freak? Tell me. It's crazy to think that the finale is already next week. This has been the fastest 6 weeks of my entire life making videos about every episode, but it's helped me appreciate them more than ever, so I hope I've been able to do that for you as well. But now there's only one more episode to go before I have to start coming up with my own original ideas again, so I'm gonna go get ahead of that now. What are we thinking about an in-depth analysis on a Buck versus Wesley oiled up twerk-off? That might be the move. In the meantime, why don't you just let me know what you thought about Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 7. I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'm gonna break into your house and jump scare you Jessica Jones style. Just please don't be in your underwear, okay? That'd be incredibly uncomfortable for the both of us.